We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life.
So you wanted it to keep going.
Well, if you've read my novels, you know there was enough material for more seasons. They made certain cuts, but that's fine. We have 5 other shows, 5 prequels in development that are based on other periods in the history of Westeros. Some of them just 100 years before Game of Thrones, some of them 5,000 years before Game of Thrones. And I'm working on other projects. Nettie and I are working on a book together. This is Nettie Okorafor. She wrote an amazing book called Who Fears Death that HBO has optioned, so I'm an executive producer on that, and we're developing that to be, I hope, one of the next big HBO fantasy series.
Now, did you know Game of Thrones would be ending with this season, or did they call you and say, hey, let's have a chat?
David and Dan have been saying for, like 5 years that 7 seasons was all they would go. And we got them to go to 8, but not any more than that. So, I had to custom that. There was a period like 5 years ago where they were saying 7 seasons and I was saying 10 seasons. And, they won. They're the ones actually working on it. So,
is there a character that you would love to see a spin-off with?
No, I'm committed to these prequels. I mean, I think this story ends when it ends. And I know all the actors, as great as they are, all the actors are anxious to get on and play other roles. They don't want to spend their entire lives playing one role. And that's fine. I mean, it's great. We had such an amazing cast. I mean, not only the people here tonight, but some of the people who couldn't make it, like Maisie Williams, Sophie Turner, Sibel Kekeli, Mark Addy, who played Robert in the first thing. Great cast. I was honored to work with them.
To be honest, the final season's taking a long time because it's the biggest thing we've ever done. And even though it's 6 episodes, it took us how many more shooting days than normal, Bernie, would you say? I mean,
17.
Yeah. So it was nearly a full year in Belfast, either prepping it or actually shooting it. And I think it's quite extraordinary what the crew and these actors have created. And I think when people see it, they're going to understand why it took so long. So it's really no one's gone on vacation, no one's slacking off. It's just that last season is far beyond what we've ever attempted before, and it's taken a really fucking long time. But I hope it'll be worth it.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie, and I too wish Game of Thrones would have gotten 13 seasons. I think we can all say that. If you didn't catch it, Martin also dropped some interesting details about what's happening with those other prequels that HBO was developing. Because remember, The Long Night is the one that they're filming starting in February next year. So let's break it down. There's a new round of that 4K Season 1 Blu-ray giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on the video. When Martin talks about them doing the book material and cutting a bunch of stuff out, if they were to do a direct adaptation and do everything that was in the books, it would have to be way more than 13 seasons. Like, we're talking about dwarfing The Walking Dead in terms of amount of content. When he says Dan and Dave originally only wanted to do 7 seasons, there was actually an interview after season 7 came out. Dan and Dave clarified they'd always wanted to do a 70-hour movie. What ended up happening is that in the later seasons, the scale of the action and the special effects just crushed their budget and their filming schedule so hard that they needed to spend more time actually filming the episodes. And because they were spending so much more money per episode, they had to decrease the episode count. So that was one of the reasons why we only got 7 episodes in season 7 and why we're only getting 6 episodes in season 8. So when you add those up, you end up getting 73 episodes, so you get a little bit more than they originally wanted to do. But it sounds like what would have happened is, had they gone more than, what they're currently scheduled for, is that they would have left the show, new showrunners would have come on, and usually when original creative leaves a show that they've been with for that long, it's usually not good for the future of the show. So imagine all the complaints that people have had about the last couple of seasons, magnified 1,000-fold. He also kind of talks about the other work that he is doing, so Martin also would not have been able to help them shepherd those later seasons either, because he has Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring to finish, and he has those other TV shows that he's working on, and all the Game of Thrones prequels that he says he's still committed to. So that's actually probably the more interesting thing in all this, because a little while ago, when they confirmed that the Long Night prequel was the one that they were moving forward with, They start filming the pilot for that in February. I believe they go back to Belfast for that, because even though King's Landing did not exist during the Long Night period, most of the other big locations like Old Town and Winterfell, they were just fine. Like, most of Westeros was still there. There were just a couple modern houses that hadn't been created yet. But Martin actually says that he's still committed to 5 prequels. Now, they did say that one of the prequels was dead, but it sounds like, based on the way he talks about them, they've just put them on a shelf and they're just doing one at a time. Like, they decided that The Long Night is all they need for now, and they'll revisit those other ideas in the future. If you haven't been keeping up with corporate culture, right now AT&T is in the process of buying Time Warner. There's this big merger that's going on, and the AT&T people want way more premium content from HBO. There was a comment made by one of the top executives that they're going to have to step up their game in terms of their output. So a lot of people just expected that they would produce more Game of Thrones because that's sort of their marquee show. They have a couple really good things, like they have Watchmen that's coming up, but it just seemed like it was going to be a Walking Dead situation. Like, recently, the Walking Dead people said that we're going to be making a whole bunch more spin-offs. We have a Walking Dead movie that we're planning on making. So it just seemed like they were going to do the same thing with Game of Thrones as a property at HBO, which is worrisome because usually when you ramp up the output that much, the quality dips quite a bit. So I think HBO is just like, no, we're just going to do one prequel at a time. We're not going to oversaturate the market and dilute the brand that much. So I actually think that that's a good decision on their part. So that doesn't mean that they won't have, say, like 2 prequels running in 4 or 5 years. We'll just have to wait and see. The only 2 other prequels that Martin has confirmed that they were not working on and they weren't going to do was Robert's Rebellion and Tales of Dunk and Egg, the adventures of Sir Duncan the Tall and Aegon V, who was one of Maester Aemon's younger brothers who became king of Westeros for a time. He actually mentioned him right before he died. The reason why Martin said that they're not doing Robert's Rebellion is because they're already covering most of those events through the characters' conversations in present day on the main show and through the flashbacks like Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. So it's just so close to what's happening in the timeline right now that it doesn't feel quite different enough. In any prequel spin-off series that they have would have to balance a certain amount of familiarity. Like, it still has to feel like Game of Thrones, but it can't be the exact same plot, which I know is really interesting because The Long Night involves the rise of the White Walkers and the Night King. So I am curious to see how they handle that part of the story, depending on which part of the timeline in The Long Night that they pick up. The Long Night itself is a pretty easy slam dunk period for them to tell because you have a good number of the same major houses that exist. It's set almost 10,000 years in the past, and history from that period has only been loosely spoken of in Old Nan's Tales, legends, and apocryphal tales that have been passed down through oral histories, because everything that was happening then happened before the Maesters were created, and it really wasn't until they came along that history started to be recorded in a very accurate way. They kind of had a joke about that during Season 7. So there's just a lot of room for Martin to create new lore during that period for them to turn into story. So that's why he's helping them with that one. He was involved in various degrees with the prequels, some more than others. The Long Night was one that he had a bigger hand in. So he helps give them their roadmap, their character histories, the geography, establish the continuity. I think probably the most important part is just the characters and the continuity, so it doesn't trample on anything that's happening in present day. Some of you have also noticed, too, the really interesting thing about that period in history, ancient history, is that in most legends, the rise of the Valyrian freehold, Valyrians taming dragons for the first time, happens around the same time as the tail end of the Long Night. So there is a bit of vague overlap, but remember, history is very unreliable, so there are no exact dates for everything. So let me know in the comments, what do you want them to do in the East during this Long Night TV series that's coming up? Remember, it's not supposed to premiere till 2020, probably sometime in the spring. Really hoping that they drop the first teaser for that after they air the finale for Season 8, but I think it just depends on how much footage they have to show off. Leave all your requests for bonus videos in the comments below. Congratulations, Armand Jane, you're the giveaway winner from my last big video. Please email me on the About page of my channel so I can get your details. Click here to learn all about the early release date for Season 8, great news, and click here for my Season 8 trailer video. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.